Scano. Good morning. Pardon me. Good morning. I've been up for a while, so it's really wonderful to have our guests today. We have the wonderful Roberta Hill coming from Six Nations, and our guest today is Bill Sands, who is you're in Walpole Island right now. Where I am today is in Bell River, Ontario, and that's the ancestral territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, so comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. And I'm really grateful to be able to have a home in this community and to be able to travel and be connected to so many amazing people. And so I'd like to just welcome all of the relatives that will join us today to hear Bill Sands share his story. And as you can all see, he's got his beautiful family there behind him. And I look forward to all of you introducing yourself, sharing your story, and just being with us today. Nyawa, welcome.
Thank you.
You want me to,
Roberta? Yes.
Well, no. Well, I'm actually here to support you and hear what you have to say, because it's been so many years since we've actually years since we left the Mush Hole, right? Mm-hmm. And I do believe when I look in my records, you and I were there from 1957 to 1960. The end of 1960 is when we left. So we share a lot of memories during those times. And so what we want to do is hear a bit more about what your experience was at the Mohawk Institute, the Mush Hole, because I know that as a little girl, I didn't hear about all of these things that were going on the boys' side. I'm hearing about them now at my age. I'm 70 and I'm hearing more and more stories, more horror stories of what went on there. And now we're looking at finding any children that have been buried on the site. So it's been a long, difficult journey actually since we left the Mush Hole. So welcome, Bill, and I'm here to support you. So.
Well, thank you very much, Roberta, and I really appreciate that. I just welcome that phone call when we first spoke. You called me, and Barb White got us together.
Yeah.
One of my first cousins, and but it's a long story, you know. It's been a long life since I got out of the Mush Hole, but before I went, you know, just we were a very happy family. I had three brothers and two brothers and 9 sisters. There were 12 of us, and we were happy. We lived off the land, you know. And my mom and dad both worked. My dad worked in Michigan for. It's a boat company. They're wrote to work Chris Craft Corporation, and later he worked for the Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford, and it's a long story. And we lived a really good life. We had a big garden, and most of us did on the First Nation here. And we were happy, and we shared, you know, we cut wood in the wintertime. We'd go from one house to the other different weekends and, you know, put enough wood away for the winter. And we had root cellars that we put our vegetables in, and our apples, our fruits, and it was really good. And today my sisters say we were really poor. I don't recall that at all. You know, we had a good life. We had wild horses, we had wild cows, we had pigs on the island, we had lots of snakes this big even. But it was good. It was a really good life. And I was in school in Walsburg one day. I was in grade 5, and I saw the Indian agent pull up in front of the school. It was at H.W. Burgess in Walsburg, Ontario, and I just had a gut feeling come up in my chest, and I saw him get out of his car, walk, and he had a suit coat on and a top hat, and I heard him walk down the hall and knock on the door, and he says, "Billy Sands in this room." And the teacher looked at him and said, "Yeah, he's here." So she called me, and I went to the door, and he says, "Billy," he says, "I want to buy you lunch. Me and my wife want to buy you lunch in London, Ontario." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we just want to." And I says, I don't want to go." And he said, "You are." And then he grabbed me and just led me out of the school. And I was 11 years old. We stopped in London. We did go to London for lunch, but then we went on to Mohawk. And we got there about 3:00 in the afternoon, and pulled up at the school. Just what an enormous building! I just couldn't believe my eyes. And I said, "What is that?" That's where you're going to live." And school was still in session. The school was just across to the left as you go into Mohawk. And I went there and met my teacher and classmates, and then got to walk. And it was over at 3:30, I think, and we weren't there very long. And I could just stepped out the door, and man, somebody just beat me up. Just I wasn't there half an hour, and then by the time I got to the boys' side, I got beat up again 4 times the very first day I was there, and that went on for 2 weeks. I don't know how many times a day, and I just cover up my head's over my head, and they'd be pounding me. And finally, we're watching Hockey Night in Canada. I'll never forget this. And my very first friend at Mohawk. And remember Woody Snake, Roberta?
I do.
Yeah. And this guy's pounding me. I was on the floor, and he's pounding me. And hockey game was going on, and everybody's standing around there cheering. And I felt that guy get picked up off me. Woody Snake was standing, hit him by the belt, and holding him up above me. And I looked up, and he said, "You Billy Sands?" He looked down. I said, "Yeah." He says, "Get up and defend yourself." He said, "I'm the toughest guy in the school. Nobody messes with me here." I was really happy, And he was such a big guy. And anyway, so I beat this guy up. And then I saw another guy that got me maybe that day or the day before, so I got him too. He said, "Billy, slow down." He said, "That's enough. You proved your point." So, but he was my first friend, and I never forgot that. And but that went on for almost the duration of probably since when I grade 8. The guys left me alone, even the bigger guys. And but we were taught that, just by the staff and the other students, and it was a way of life. And but the staff were the real instigators in this thing. They would push two kids together, and in the little kids, a lot of kids came from the north or somewhere other community, and they couldn't speak English. They just spoke their language. And I'll never forget the day I saw my good friend Freddie Taylor come in. And I don't know if they had any. Did he have any sisters?
He does have sisters, yeah.
Were they there at Mohawk also?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So there were 5 or 6 brothers, and then Freddie was the tallest and down to the lowest guy. And the very next, and I, we became friends right away. And I tried to talk to them. They just spoke the Ojibwe. And I saw one teacher, one of the staff, great big guy, just maybe the second smallest guy, and they were young. Knocked him right off his feet. And I said, "That's wow. I'm coming back someday." But the guy was gone by the time I had really hard feelings toward that school. I wanted to go back and hurt some people. And I know a lot of the guys didn't want to, and I don't know if anyone ever did, but that was my real intention, to do that, to get revenge. And they say we're on a healing journey. That's I'm not going to heal.
Yeah. Stays with you forever, Bill. It does stay with you to me, it stays with us forever. It's not something that you get over, like everybody says, get over it. It was a way of life. It's forever in your collective memory. All those experiences stay with you. You can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never spoke to anybody. My mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters. I got married with my wife, my child. I never spoke about it at all. And my 4 years there, until we went to court. I don't know, 5 or 6 of my buddies called me. Willie Beeswax. Remember Willie Beeswax?
I do.
Yeah, he called me and he said, "Billy," he said, we want to start we want to hire a lawyer, and go after the Mush Hole, Canada, and the church really. So he said, "Are you in?" I said, "Yeah." So we went to meet Russ Rakes, and that's the first time I ever spoke about it. And my wife went with me, and then I started reminiscing, I guess. Russ started asking me questions, and it was really, really hard. And like then I started remembering, and then when we went to we started a court action, and we were in court for 11 years, and finally they made the settlement out west, I guess, and our lawyer Russ Rakes, he made a lot of money from that, from representing us, and he really wronged us. It was totally wrong what he did. And I met Murray Sinclair, and he said he heard of me and my story, and he said he can help me. But I gave him my card, and he didn't have one on him, so I gave him my card. And I never heard from him again, but I'm sure he'd talk to me if I could ever reach him. And he was the head guy in reconciliation. So I'd like to see him someday. But and then we were in court, and we were in our steering committee. You weren't on the steering committee, Roberta.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
In London, Ontario, with Russ Rakes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Laurel. Yeah, Laurel was there. Yeah.
And wow. And one day we're in our meeting, and I put my hand up, and they were getting ready to go west, I guess. And he said, "Yes, Bill." I said, "We want to be at this hearing or whatever it is out west." He said, "Bill, you are the leverage of this whole settlement." You remember that? And he says, "You're the whole leverage of this whole thing." He says, "You will definitely be there." I said, "Not especially me, but our committee has to be there." And he said, "You will." And I was representing the children in this class action lawsuit, and I really looked forward to doing that, because I was looking into the future. I'm a hunting and fishing guide for 60 years, and we still don't have our own commercial fishing license. And that's why I wanted to go after our hunting rights, our fishing rights, and get our land back and our natural resources. And we don't get any of that. And that was my goal. And even today, we're really suffering on our First Nation. People can come from, I'm not prejudiced, but people come from other countries, and they land in Canada, and not even 6 months they have a commercial fishing license. And I tried to get one, they wouldn't give me one. Canada wouldn't give me one, or Ontario wouldn't. And we need our own, and we can do it now. But that's where I was going, and I just look so forward to getting on the stand and saying my piece about it. And but we sell out of our communities, and we get peanuts compared to the market value. My son Bill Jr. fishes with me, and 2 years ago he called me up. He said, "Dad," he says, "guess what they're getting for a pound of walleye in Toronto at the big market there?" I can't remember what it was, but anyway, it's a grocery chain, the biggest chain in Canada. And I says, $16 a pound. They were $22 or $24 a pound, and we get $8 or $10 in our communities. We're missing out. So, but it's been a long struggle. And I went to my council, and they said they would back us, and we still can't get it done. I don't know what the holdup is. And 5 bands in BC went to court, and they said they could fish for food and ceremonial purposes, but they can't sell their fish. But they won in 2017, I believe. They won a court case. 5 bands, they can now fish and sell their fish, and that's all of us, all First Nations people. But we still don't have it. And I asked my chief and council. I got support from our Heritage Center. There are land claims and all that, and I got their support, and it's still not happening. I don't know. It's been a long battle, but I'm not giving up. And so that's where I was going in. And we have to go back to court, but because I have the proof that Russ Rakes did sell us out. And and I just got to get my file back. And that's, and I'm going to say it, Wally McKay, he took my file. He came to Walpole Island. Isidore Day, he was our regional chief in 2015, and he came to Walpole, and a couple of councils. Bill, Isidore Day said at a meeting at the band office, you got anything you want to talk to him about? I said, sure, man. I couldn't believe my ears. So I went to where four of us elders went there, and everyone said what their concern, and I told him, and it was very emotional because it's really hard to get this story out. But anyway, in the end, he said, Bill, he says, I'd like to recommend Wally McKay. He's a past leader, and he's a good man, and he can help you. He could help you very, very well. So we made up a time for him to come, and he came, and he got my file. I don't know why I didn't copy my file, but I didn't. I'm not like that. Maybe I was so excited, but that was in 2015 or just first part of 16, and he still has my file, and that's my whole court case. The 11 years we're in court. So I would like our steering committee to get back together sometime and accumulate that again. We're trying to get it here in Walpole Island if we can't, but I'm sure other kids kept their copies. I kept my whole thing, and I picked out the best stuff that went toward our case. So, and at the Isidore Day, there was a meeting downtown Toronto, and he called me, and he says, Bill, he says, there's a meeting downtown, and Wally McKay's going to be there. I'm in the meeting. He said, but I'm going to talk to him right in front of everybody. He said, Bill Sands wants his file back. He said, okay. He said, I'll get it. He said, I just got to find it. And he said, for sure? He said, yes, I promise you, I'll get it to you. And that was probably, geez, I can't remember now. But anyway, we need that file, and we need that proof. And when Russ Rakes did go out west, and he called a steering committee member and said, if you got to sign for the settlement, and she said, I can't. She says, the steering committee. She said, Bill Sands accepted, Ron DeLeary accepted it, other people accepted it, and she still said, I can't. But anyway, she did, and but he said, if any survivors at the table, negotiating table, Canada won't sit down, and that was not true. They settled, and we had a chance. If 5,000 survivors opted out of that settlement, then we didn't have to accept that settlement. Otherwise, we accepted what we got. And I felt for the other survivors because they were up there in age, a lot of them, and every day was going by, I'm sure we were losing survivors, I really felt for them. But so I wrote a letter to Justice Winkler, and I do have that letter to him, and I said, on my own self, I said, I do not agree with the agreement that's in place. And I said, we were supposed to be at that table, and our lawyer told us that, and he promised us, and that didn't happen. And I was standing there with me and Ron DeLeary, and when we objected to that settlement, and Russ Rakes walked up, and he said, Bill, he said, if you mention my name or cut me down or say anything about me on the stand, he says, I'm coming up there and I'm going to cut you down. And he threatened me in the courtroom. And Ron heard it, but our good friend Ron is gone now. But Canada has to accept our stories now, what we are saying. But anyway, so then Winkler says, I want to speak to this Bill Sands first. I want him to first come. There were 17 objectors, so someone hear from me. So I got up there and he asked me why I objected, and I told him, and I said, sir, can I say something? He said, yes. I said, Russ Rakes is right there, our lawyer, and I said, he just threatened me in your courtroom. Told him what he said to me, and he said, Mr. Sands, sit down. So I sat down, and he called Russ up to the podium or whatever it is, and he says, "Did you threaten Bill Sands in my courtroom?" And he started trying to talk about something else. He says, "Mr. Rakes," he said, "I asked you, did you threaten Bill Sands in my courtroom?" And he said, "No." And that was it. None. I had a witness right there standing beside me, Ron Delirium. But anyway, we lost out there, another loss. But and then after that, the settlement was reached, and Phil Fontaine was the national chief at that time, and he had a celebration in Toronto. Did you go to that, Roberta?
No.
I did, and Ron Delirium did again. There was a lot of people. It was right downtown Toronto, and I don't know how many. There was a lot of people there, and it was a 3-day event, and Phil opened the ceremonies, and then he closed the ceremonies, and then at the end, everybody lined up to shake his hand. And everybody went up ahead of me, and I just asked Ron. He says, "Are you going up, Bill?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you?" He said, "No." So I went up there and I grabbed Phil's hand and I squeezed his hand. He's, "Bill, I knew Phil," and he says, "Bill, you're hurting me." I said, "No, I came up here to hurt you." I said, "You sold us out. Tell me about it before you do anything." So I told him that Russ Rakes said that if any survivors at the table, negotiating table, Canada won't sit down. He's a liar. I will say that to anybody. He said we were all survivors, but we weren't there, and we were promised that we would be there. And even out there, he said you were the leverage of this thing, and everyone knew that, but we weren't invited. That was wrong. We have to go back to court, and I'm sure Canada will see that now. Every time we turn around, we're shafted. So, but that's my goal. I'd like our steering committee to put our thing, what we have, all our recollections and all our papers back together, and go back to court. I don't think they'll turn us down. That is my main goal. And and then I made a lot of friends in Mohawk, and I've seen very few over the years. I got married and I have six children, and I lived off the land for 20 years, totally 25 years, just hunting, fishing, guiding, trapping, and that way of life, and it was good. And but now we can't even exercise our Aboriginal rights, and we need to do that. Canada has to open up those resources. They're ours, and hopefully out of this thing, the finding the missing bodies and all that, they'll see that they have to come back to the table with us. And we have a bombshell for Canada. And I'd like to get together with you, Roberta, and your chief, and Janet at Mohawk, and whoever else is your committee, and pick a date when we can release this. It's not a story; it's a fact. That you know what I mean about. I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Get ahead of ourselves, but that's what I would like to do. If we can get together, and I think the sooner the better. If your chief and Janice can call a meeting, we would go. And we have a little committee on Walpole, and we're willing to do that. And I think the sooner the better. And my grandson, I've lived a pretty good life. I really cherish our grounds, our natural resources, and I protect it as best I can. And I taught my sons and daughters how to love and respect those resources. And like when I introduced to my grandson Braden, he's right in my footsteps. And when I go to a meeting, he's with me, and he speaks up. He's only 15 years old, and but he's learning, and he's learning the right way to do things, and that's what we have to do. So, but in the end, And I'd like to see survivors. Like I said, I've seen very few. I saw you in 2003, was it? I think.
Might have been my sister Dawn.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, with Dawn. She was with Barb.
Barb, yep.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if well, nobody probably knew who I was either. But I'd like to go back and see you guys and meet again, and just it would be nice. I enjoyed our steering committee meetings. They were good, and but we got shafted there. Russ. I went to Muncie, Ontario, and to a thing that the chief adjudicator from Ottawa was there speaking, and someone called me, so I went, and I told them my story that they sent me a check from Ottawa, and Russ Ray went to his firm, and then Russ Rakes took 28 or 32,000 of my settlement. And he said, Bill, that was totally wrong. I think I even had the copy of my check to show the guy. And I have his name, and he's probably still in Ottawa, but he's the chief adjudicator. He said, Bill, that was totally wrong. I said, and he was paid right off the top. And everybody that I speak to, all the survivors, he done the same to them. Gordy Peters, Gordy Hopkins. Remember Gordy Hopkins?
Yeah.
He told me he took 50,000 of his settlement. Wow. But he said that was wrong. So we have to go back there again also. And now Russ is a lawyer in Sarnia, Ontario.
He's a judge.
A judge. I'm sorry. Yeah. He was our lawyer. Yeah, that's right. So it's not, this battle's not going to be as long as all this long when we're just getting over now. I think Canada's come to grips with us, and I think we need a real settlement.
Well, I do remember at the steering committee meetings, I do remember when Russell Rake said he couldn't take every one of the steering committee members. He said he would take some of them. I do remember that. So, and that never happened. Yeah.
No. Yeah, and I requested. I've made the request that he take part of the steering committee. Yeah, and he said, "I assure you, you will be there," and that never happened. He's got some of the guys didn't agree with him, and our steering committee members, they just hated his guts, and I said, he's all right, you're nuts, Bill. But in the end, they were right. They saw something that I didn't. So
well, it's the same old thing though. It's the lawyers and them. They really benefit from what happened to us. They benefited, and they benefited in a big way. Whereas survivors, no, they didn't get. No survivor got what they should have gotten out of this. And so that's something that to me it bothers me that how can they put a price like that and they really lowballed everybody for sure. And how do they get away with this? I really don't know. And maybe like you said, it's those powers that be out west or whoever it was that was sitting at the table. They actually spoke on our behalf, but they weren't speaking for us to benefit from it the way we should have, And sounds like there was a lot of influence somewhere.
Yes, and I think deep down, I think Canada influenced Russ Rakes. I really do.
Somebody did.
Because of the precedent was set. I told you about the two brothers in London, Swills brothers. They were two brothers were compensated $1.2 or $1.3 million apiece, and their parents and their brothers and sisters, everyone was compensated. And I know a gentleman in Muncie went on his own to do it. Me and Ron DeLeary started to do that, and we backed out for some reason. I mean, we couldn't come up with some cash or something. But anyway, we backed out. And this guy was successful. And he wasn't with the class action. He just went on his own, and he got $1 million.
Yeah.
And I believe his children were counseled. So that precedent was set when that went to court, but ours didn't go to court. They settled it out at the table in Winnipeg or wherever it was.
Yeah, regardless of whether we went to court or not, it should have been a fair settlement if there's precedent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We know that it was worth a lot more. We do know that. But you're looking at residential school survivors who are still in a lot of pain, reliving everything again through this lawsuit, and that little bit that they're given or offered or whatever. I don't think that most people would have seen any other way but to take it. I really don't. And yet it should have been worth a lot more. It's like one person had said to me, like, when a child is raped, what's one rape worth? You're putting a price on all of these horrible things and saying that, oh yeah, you know what? If you're an Indigenous child and you get raped and abused, you're not worth much. You're not worth what you think you are. So here's what we're going to give you. That's what I don't like about it. It's like, how do you put a price on all of that? On all the horrific things that children went through at residential school? It's pretty much a kick in the teeth, really.
It was. It still is.
Yeah.
And Russ Rakes, when I got my settlement, I went to his office and he said, Bill, there was no monies for rape. That was one of the most horrific things that happened.
He actually said that to you?
Yeah.
Then what were we settling? He didn't disclose that to us. I don't ever remember him saying that there's no money for rape because that's part of the abuse. Or is it because that it was church officials who were doing a lot of the raping?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's siding with them. I really don't know.
And I don't know how much the church got involved in the settlement either. I don't know much about it. When they reached the settlement, I only went to see Phil Fontaine and at that celebration, victory celebration, I think they called it. But I've been trying to make some headway, but it's really hard here. Hard to get the backing of my leadership here is the truth. So, but I went one time to try and tell my story, and the chief said, "That's your own private affair, Bill." That's what the chief, my chief, told me. Not the current chief, but past chief. And everyone on Walpole Island was affected in every community. So, but that's how it is, or was on this First Nation anyway. But I think we got a lot of support now, and I say let's run with it.
Yeah. And as we're getting a lot older, it's another fight. We've got to, you got to get into another fight with them, another challenge there. And I don't see how they got away with what they got away with, because abuse is abuse. If it was your average person, a Canadian citizen who raped a child, they don't get away with it.
No, they don't.
You don't get away with it. You get away with it because you're a church member? Shouldn't happen. Rape is rape.
And we asked if he was pursuing these people, and he said no. They're older. That's what Russ said. He said it's not worth going after them.
Wow.
That is unbelievable. I've never seen him since he gave me my check. That's the last time I seen him. But I do want to see him back in court.
That may happen. I don't know yet, but it could happen. We're working on things. We're working on bringing all the survivors together too, Bill. Probably. Yep. I know that we're planning a gathering October the 1st and the 2nd right on the grounds there at the Mush Hole. If we get together before that, that would be okay. Mm-hmm. And we do have a meeting once a week, so maybe you could join one of our meetings. Bring your guys from Walpole to talk about what you were talking about, that you need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, we discussed it at our meeting, and they're in agreement. Yeah, they were putting a budget together with us last week, I believe. Eh? Yeah. So they're putting a budget together so we can go there and just.
we're getting more organized in who we're going to bring on board with us to do all this. So as soon as we've got the right people in place, you're probably going to be hearing from them.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. And the guy that we thought we had a guy that was investigator, he didn't pan out. He said this is too big. It was too big for him. He didn't want to tackle it. So we had our hopes up high, but apparently you guys have someone.
Mm-hmm. We have a few people, good people on board, but you're going to hear about that soon as we get them all in place. We'll probably be releasing that information, or the chief will, So yeah. It's just getting organized and making sure we do have the proper people that can do this, because it is being, it's like it's a criminal investigation, really.
Yes. Yes.
So it has to be done the right way. Yeah. The right people on board, or else we're gonna lose everything,
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are today.
Are there our own lawyers that can represent us?
In which part?
In the when we go back to court.
We don't have anything other than, like I said, I was waiting for more information to come from some of the guys from the north. So that's what we have to wait for. I can't really say right now because I haven't seen what's coming, but I have an idea that we will be gathering again to talk about these things. Yeah.
And there was this couple that came from way up north, way up near James Bay or someplace, and they always came to our meetings. So one time they got snowed in, they got there a little late, but they showed up. Remember that family?
Is that the ones that had the Fort Albany that had the electric chair?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I talked to them. I lost their number, but I talked to them a couple of years ago, and they were really glad to hear from me. And he invited me moose hunting, and I said I'll be there. But
Yeah, no, I find them. I can't remember the names either, but I find them online when I really have to go looking, because Fort Albany is still, I think they're still fighting the government.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do see bits and pieces in the paper now and then. So,
but as far as the Mush Hole, we need all the voices from the Mush Hole that can speak about what they knew as children, what they saw. Those types of things, because there's a long history at the Mush Hole. Like, that place was open for like 142 years. 142 years. That's a long time. So we find different people, different generations. They can tell you little bits and pieces. It's how we put it all together, I guess, and do the search. But yeah, there's a lot of stories over the years about children, how they were harmed or if they're missing. But I think even through the TRC, they knew that there's at least maybe a little bit over 50 names that they have to look for that aren't accounted for right now from the Mush Hole.
Really?
Yeah. So we got to find those, and I think it's going to uncover quite a bit. I really do, with the researchers we got and the people we're getting on board. Yeah. We need the answers. We do need the answers to all this, for sure.
And the sooner the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that should be happening fairly soon. It's like I said, it's getting the right people, and we've got quite a bit on. We've got quite a good selection of people that are really qualified to be involved in this, and that's what we want, the qualified people. That have to be accountable. They'll be accountable to the survivors. They have to let us know, report back to us, because we're the ones that really are spearheading this. So yeah. So anybody that comes from any other First Nation that had kids at the Mush Hole, or even Mush Hole kids were sent to other residential schools. So it didn't just stay at the Mush Hole. It didn't. I've heard stories about Mount Elgin. One kid from Mount Elgin. Not one kid from Mohawk, from Six Nations, being sent to Mount Elgin. Where's that kid? So there's a lot to this. It's a big investigation, really.
Yep, it's and a lot of my friends, I have a lot of friends, local friends around the island, farmers, hunters, fishermen, just people I know, and they since they start finding these graves, they never knew what residential schools really were. They'd read it in the headline or something like that, but they never knew it was as bad and horrific as it is. They said, wow, I have a good friend I'm trying to partner with right now in the business, and he said, Bill, I never knew. And grew up together. So.
Yeah. That's Canada's big secret, though. It's always been a secret. If it was such a nice place, you would have seen everything plastered in the news about how wonderful residential schools were. I don't ever remember growing up and reading anything that was wonderful about the schools. And, to me, if it was, then everybody should have been sending their kids there if it was that great.
Yeah. And every once in a while you see in a little bit in the paper that it wasn't bad. It wasn't, you're right, it wasn't bad. It was bad. It was
worse.
Worse.
Yeah. But there's accountability someplace. Somebody has to be accountable for all of this, And if you're just going to issue a little bit of money and say, oh, here's your money, go away, we still haven't had the accountability. We need to have more accountability from the government and the church. How could this even happen? It's just crazy how things can get covered up. That's what I don't like about it. It's somebody's not telling the truth. Let's put it that way, And you hear bits and pieces of stories, and everyone that went to the Mush Hole knows something, that it wasn't a healthy place to raise children. It just wasn't. There was just too many pedophiles, perverts in there, that it wasn't just the boys' side. There was some on the girls' side too. So, it's just, I don't hear a lot from the women. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means they're probably still not able to speak about it, In
Indian Affairs has always been involved. I don't see anything about Indian Affairs has done us no good there or even today.
That's right. They were very much involved because
yes.
I think that if you look at all of how they picked you up, who sent who to pick you up?
Indian Affairs told the Indian agents, I'm sure.
It's Indian agents usually.
Yeah.
And that's who works under the guidance or the administration of Indian Affairs. So they were very much involved in who sets policy and procedures for all this. Indian Affairs, federal government, and then they had, if you look at the Mounties, the RCMP, the RCMP was very much involved in what their title is. It says they're in charge of criminal division. Well, who the heck were the criminals? You're going after kids, not the criminals.
Yeah. They were protected there.
Yeah, somebody was. It wasn't the children, Yeah, and I think that's the sad part is that they kind of ganged up and had everything in place in order to do what they did, to keep it such a big secret, But I had a friend that she's passed away, but I think when her and I were at the Mush Hole together around the same time, and she said she got brave one time, and how Zimmerman was never held accountable. But she said she was up at a wedding in Brantford one time, and Zimmerman was still living after the Mush Hole closed. He was still in the in that house, right?
Yeah.
And after the wedding, she said, I got really brave. I'd had a few beers or whatever, and so she went and knocked on Skin's door, and Skin answered the door, and she said, do you remember who I am? And he said, yeah. She says, and I remember you too. And she said, and he, how did it go? She says, do you remember me? And he said, yeah. And she says, I remember you too, and what you did to me. And boom, the door got slammed in her face. He wouldn't deal with it, but she did confront him, and he knew that, maybe there's a reckoning coming, but I don't know how long he lived after that. But she did have an opportunity to address him right to his face. And he just was such a coward and, slammed the door on this young lady and wouldn't deal with it,
Yeah, he was a terrible person. He'd get so frustrated when he couldn't make us guys cry. And we were just little guys too, all the way up. We'd drop our drawers, lay across the chair, and he had the belt was that long and probably that wide, and a wooden handle. And he, how big he was. He'd come off the floor when he was coming down to hit us. And he couldn't make us cry. He'd just be turning color. And I'm colorblind, but I could see he was turning color.
Yeah, he was a very brutal, angry man, and he inflicted a lot of pain on kids, and for what? I was like, I keep telling people, we weren't criminals. We were children. Those guys running the school are the criminals, Those are the ones who should have been prosecuted.
Yeah.
Not us. No child should have gone to juvenile detention from there. they just shouldn't have, because that was the alternative when they couldn't, like you said, they can't make you cry, they can't break you. So what do? They'll make sure that you go to another place, and it's like, okay, I'll send you to a worse place because you're not listening, or I can't make you conform to what I want you to be. So I just think it was the whole system, residential school, juvenile detention centers, and from there, from what? We didn't learn anything. We learned a lot about violence and how to survive. So what do? You go from juvenile detention center. When you leave the Mush Hole, you're still in pain. What do? Drink, drugs, get you into trouble. So you're going to end up in the legal system again, and whose fault is it? It's just you're trying to cope with life, and you had to learn after you left how to behave. And, unfortunately, it cost people a lot because they ended up in the juvenile centers or in the jails, in the prisons. And I don't think that's where they belong, because if people really understood what children from residential school, from the Mush Hole, went through, there's no way that they should have been in jail. They should have had help. They should have had counseling.
Yeah.
They should have been taught other things other than the violence, brutality, the abuse, So that's just kind of where I am. It's that it should never have happened. These are children. We were children.
Yeah. And there were babies, and
Yes.
I know some kids, the white-eyed boys, they were the youngest one, Albert, I think he was, no, maybe
Barb was younger.
Barb was Barb the youngest?
Yeah.
They were babies, they told me, and I saw those Taylor boys. They were babies,
Just little guys, yeah.
Yeah.
And how could you put a child into this? And you can't tell me that. Well, you look at the minister. There's 2 ministers running the place, and they're both pedophiles.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what they were doing when they were bringing children in. They wanted children in there because that's who they are, So they knew exactly what they were doing with these schools. They knew enough to keep it quiet, to keep it segregated from the general population in Brantford. It was just designed that way to brutalize children and get what they wanted out of it, and that was it. That's what I see, anyways. Maybe I'm not seeing the right thing, but I don't think children stood a chance in there, really. No.
They didn't, and I thought a lot of the staff was ex-military people.
Mm.
That's what I thought.
Probably.
They the discipline they handed out to us. They'd make up stories, and I think there were, but I don't know. There was more boys than girls there. I always thought more boys.
It was pretty close to being even.
What, 100 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they'd make up a story, and they'd line all us guys up, sometimes 2 or 3 days, and until someone gave in to what was there was nothing even there. And then if no one did, then they put us all with toothbrushes across the whole bottom cement floor. We'd scrub it over and over again. Did that happen on your side?
Yeah, the girls. Yeah, my sister, I think, had to scrub the stairs one time. I don't know what they were doing. It's just like, obviously they weren't parents, and they should never have been our parents. Let's put it that way. If the church it's the church people and all these other people, they were not parents. They were not there to parent us. They were there to keep us under their control. That's the way I look at it. Because they have all these rules, all these regulations, all the punishments that if you don't do what we say we want you to do, then here's what's going to happen to you. So it was not a place for children. It just wasn't. It was pretty brutal for kids. It's not how, and yet if you look at some of the things that we took away from residential school, all that, to me, that military style, marching in line all the time, we learned those things to stay boxed in like that. And I think we passed a lot of things on to our kids too, about the structure and the you do as I say, because that's how we were raised, right? And so I see that in my kids, is that, I was probably an overbearing parent. I wasn't very fair to them, but you don't see that when you're a young parent. You're only trying to live. You're only trying to raise your children. But yet a lot of these things kept creeping into how you raise your children, and it wasn't healthy for them either.
No, it wasn't.
No.
Our children suffered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the food, you know, we had a huge. I know we had the biggest vegetable garden in Brantford, Ontario, and we had dairy cattle, we had beef cattle, we had chickens, pigs, you know, and eggs. We got powdered eggs, we got powdered milk, we got potatoes too. You know?
I don't remember potatoes too much, but I'm sure we did.
Yeah, everything was powdered.
Yeah, that's because they were selling the food.
Yeah, even our toothpaste. I remember that powdered toothpaste.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember something like I remember when we got a toothbrush. I don't know that it was there all the time, but the kids. I remember the girls were saying when we were walking around on the playground one time, they told us because we were looking for more toothpaste or something. They said, well, just eat that, just chew on that charcoal. Oh, hey, it cleans your teeth. It was pretty good. So I used to eat charcoal.
Yeah, we used to do that. We used to get it by the railroad track or something like that. It was shiny. We used to chew on that too. I remember that. I don't know why we did.
We just adapted to whatever somebody told us, chew the charcoal. And I think today it's probably not a bad idea compared to what's in some of the stuff. You know?
I got out there. I just turned 16 and 17. I was 17 and I had a abscess tooth. And I told my mom, so she took me to the dentist in Walpole. I went in there and I had an abscess tooth. And I walked in there and I said, Doc, he says, yeah. I says, they say you won't pull an abscess tooth. And he says, well, let me look at it. He got in the chair and he looked at it. Yeah, I can pull that, he said. And I says, you know that stuff you rub on you? You better rub some of that, or if you give me that needle, if you hurt me, I might hit you. So he did. So he put the Novocaine on there and then he gave me a needle in my mouth somewhere. Is you ready? I said, yeah. So he wasn't very long and he had a chuckle on his face. And I said, so what's so funny, Doc? I was all, you know, the stuff I could hardly talk, but he had a smirk on his face. And I think he pulled 5 or 7 teeth. We never saw dentists over there either.
I think they were only there once in a while because I was the same as you. I had an abscess tooth and I had it for months and months where you could just press and you'd get this stuff draining from your tooth and nobody looked after our teeth. And there was somebody, it might have been a dentist or we got sent down to Schweigen dentist maybe, and they did pull that one. Yeah. But it was abscess for a long time. Because
we kind of lived on that McCormick's factory. We'd go to the city dump and we bring back boxes of candy. Remember? Did you ever get any of that?
Well, the odd time I would, when somebody would pass it to the girls. Yeah, I knew you guys were going to the dump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I had all those cavities. You know.
But I know they didn't have good dental care, and I know that generally speaking, I don't think the health care was that great anyways, you know, and then if you look at the records, it seems to be that it was the dollar figure. Were we worth it? Were we worth spending money to fix these?
Yeah, to fix them. Yeah. No. Was there any success getting the records from Skin?
No. Which kind of records? Because I heard there was boxes of records, and I don't know where they went to at the end when it closed. Apparently, there was some records. I have no idea where they went.
I thought Russ Rake said they asked for the records from his wife, and she refused. That's
Bessie, and I think she's passed away, so I don't know where those records are. I don't know. I think they may be lost, probably. But the only thing that I know with records, though, Bill, is if you're looking for more of your information, and you went through the TRC to testify. Did you go to you went to the TRC?
In London, Ontario. You know, I went to a psychiatrist. And then I went to the hearing. Well,
the thing with that is, though, you can go to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation online, and as a survivor, you can request whatever files that they've got. I got a package from them. It took them about a year, but you can get some of your own records from them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they, you know, just. Some school records going back years and years. They must have compiled something. They had to show some sort of record, you know, to whoever they're paying for their but Canada didn't care anyway. So.
Well, but I have some of those. When they sent me some of mine, what I got was how I got there, what happened to my mother, what happened to my father, and then I got some school records. I got everybody's name in there and what marks I got. They didn't show me the other kids' marks, but they showed me some of my marks, and I got lists and lists of kids that were there, and how we ended up in foster care from there. I have those records.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some out there if you go looking for them.
Yeah, I do have my school records from there, because I was in my class when I graduated. I was the highest boy, and there was maybe 2 girls with higher marks than me. And when I went to grade 9 in Walsburg, I wrote my Christmas exams, and everything was over 90% except French. I think I got a 5, maybe. I didn't know what French was at all.
No, I didn't take any of those. But yeah, it's you can certainly find something. You could probably get more records though if you really go after the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation.
Yeah. So you spoken to Jimmy Goose?
Yeah, Jimmy Edgar. He goes by Edgar. He wasn't really Goose. He was Edgar. He's an Edgar. Last name Edgar.
When he was in Mohawk, he was a Goose, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that's not who he is. His last name is Edgar.
Yeah.
So he wants to. He is called, but he was on. Was it last week? Last week.
Yeah.
And so if you go through my Facebook page, you'll probably see him. There's a recording there. And in some of the words that he said, like he said, he had written, I call it a poem, but I don't know that he calls it a poem, but it was pretty darn powerful. And everybody should hear what he had written.
That's on your email, Roberta?
Yeah, you can, I'll send it to you on my phone. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you go on Facebook, maybe your daughter can get you on there, and you'll see we have one survivors once a week that come on and talk. And so we've had our local guys like Geronimo, John Elliott. We've got a few. Don was on. There's just a few. I'm still looking for people. And if anybody wants to have that voice, one of those Mush Hole voices, they're certainly welcome. Once a week here, we can get them on. And so you tell us things, survivors tell things that sometimes I've never heard. I hear new things all the time, and I never understood Jimmy's, how he got there. But it's very much like you, is that, they might have, his dad looked after him and his brothers. They might have escaped once, but then they caught up with him and made sure that they took those kids away from him. And for what? For what?
Yeah.
I like the life when you said you had a very simple life. That's what it was. And I don't consider myself to have, we weren't rich, but what do you do? Well, how do you define richness and wealth when it comes to love and family? That we had everything that we needed when we were kids prior to the Mush Hole. Yeah, and so that should never be condemned. That should never be condemned. To me, it was just an excuse by the government or the churches, whoever wanted to take kids in and do what they did. So if I lived in poverty, I didn't consider that, and it was never part of my vocabulary as a child. On Six Nations, we just lived like anybody else. So our houses were poor. Why were they poor? Maybe because the government took all the money, didn't pay for the land, wasn't, honoring what they should have honored. Everybody, to me, to this day, everyone on Six Nations should have a house that is built, a well-built house, because of what they owe. But we still see the struggles to this day, the poor housing, contaminated water. Why? It just goes on and on.
Yeah, it sure does. They were talking about, someone told me on Facebook that some lady talked about the bad water on First Nations. Mm-hmm. And somebody got in and said, so what? Someone just told me that yesterday.
So what?
One of my sisters, and she responded to her. And I didn't know what she said. So, yeah. So
anyway, that's where we are, and it is. We still have contaminated water. I still buy bottled water, and I was drinking this contaminated water for years until I got my water tested. Didn't know that I was drinking very unhealthy water that, in the long term could probably cause a lot of harm to people. So yeah, it's still there.
To me, the worst water I've ever had was in Mohawk.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes, I do. I bet you there was lead in. I bet you there was lead in those pipes.
Oh, it had an odor.
Yeah, it did.
And you could feel it going down, and they mixed that powdered milk with that water even.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't drink water for, I don't know, finally I had to, I guess. I know I had a really hard time.
It had an odor to it. That's what I
It
remember.
sure did.
Mm-hmm.
Like a sulfur odor, I think.
Something. I'm not sure what it was, but it had an odor, and it had sometimes, if it sat too long over the summer, it had like rusty color.
And the school was closed in summertime because everybody went home or to Christian Island, right?
I went to Christian Island, but it wasn't always the whole summer.
No.
We came back the end of July or 1st of August sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I know the White Eye boys always went there. Yeah.
It was fun.
There
were some bad things there too, but overall it was like a kid's paradise because you could swim every day, go hiking, do crafts. That was a good thing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Jody.
Hi. I cleaned my house and listened to you. That's the reality. I think a lot of people are sitting down. We have some really beautiful messages here. Some probably angry messages. People are upset, sad. But within, what I'm learning is that within all of this, the way that we heal is through, expressing those emotions. And so whether it be laughter, anger, or whatever, it's all a way towards healing. And I really respect you, Bill, for, sharing your truth that those are things that just will never heal. And we do the best that we can every day of our life. And I'm just in awe and grateful that I get to share this space with people who sacrificed for our country. And you can go and when we exit this broadcast, you can go into on the right hand of your screen. It says comments, and maybe you can spend some time on the back end just saying see ya to each other and have a little conversation when we exit. But I just wanted to express my gratitude for everyone that continues to show up to support the children of the residential schools. And Bill, when I first saw you, our first interaction, and I think within, not even a minute, you said, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this. And I never knew what it was, but Renee said that to me 7 years ago when I met her, saying, I've been waiting for you. And every time we meet someone, it seems to be that I've been waiting for the day that I could speak and see you again and really share this space to support your voices. And we really don't know, what this is, where this is going to take us, but we're doing it together. And it's time. Whatever time it is, it's time. And everyone seems to right? Everyone wants to do something.
Yep.
And so if we can continue to show up for those who have been sitting and waiting as well for this time, we'll just keep reaching out to them and keep our lines open and our platforms available to all of the people who continue to reach out to us and just express their sorrow and their grief. We're here. And did you want to add anything before we see ya?
Well, I'd just like to thank Roberta, and she's been very helpful to me. It's getting easier for me. We have a committee, like you have a committee, and we started one on the island, but we've had 3 meetings, and it's easier for me to speak because I just couldn't speak before, and I was angry, and you don't get anywhere in that mood or that tone, you don't. But thank you, Roberta, and I just appreciate all your help.
We'll be talking again.
Oh, and let's get that bombshell out there soon.
We will.
Canada's gonna wake up.
And we're gonna get our memorial park built too. We're gonna have that park, the Memorial Park, Mohawk Village Memorial Park, right beside the Mush Hole to remind people to honor the children who went there over 142 years and all other residential schools, you know. It needs to be there, and it needs to reflect what happened in Canada, what happened at this school to Indigenous children, and why anyone would think that residential schools were a good thing. They actually caused a lot of harm, but it's to honor the children.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody wants to support, they can support the Mohawk Village Memorial Park. Donate. Yes.
We are starting the same thing. Maybe that's where we were. Maybe that's where we should donate in our. You know what I mean?
They want one here.
Oh, they want one.
Yeah.
Here? Oh, okay.
You want to what?
Yeah. That's fine.
They want.
Yeah.
They want one in Walpole also.
Yeah.
Of course, and we were actually, what Don and I were Roberta and Don and I were talking about is, you know, maybe this is the movement that we begin, is that, you know, we know the Veterans Memorial, they have memorials all over Canada, and maybe that's what we do, is we're starting this movement that we need the land, and that's the reality. You know, Roberta, we were saying earlier, you need the land, because if people are visiting this space and place and experiences and the history, then the land is where we know the healing is. And so we need to prepare, as grandmother Renee says, we need to prepare the land for the people to visit. And that means we need to prepare the land for the people to visit, get these memorial parks going. So, I mean, you know, if you guys want to reach out to us off to the side, we can kind of tell you what we've been doing, and maybe we can support you by doing the same thing. Let's have a conversation about that. And so, yes, everyone can visit the Mohawk Village Memorial Park.com website, and there's a donate button there. And then keep your eyes out for the same thing happening in Walpole Island. I think across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Nyawa for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.